Have you ever looked at a huge mistake, a business that failed, a political disaster, and just wondered how? How on earth did all those brilliant, experienced people not see it coming? You know, we like to think that being smart protects us from making dumb decisions, but history, well, it tells a much more interesting story. All right, let's get into it.
Think about Pearl Harbor. This disaster did not just happen out of the blue. There were warning signs. There was intelligence. But somehow, all those signals were dismissed or just explained away by some very smart leaders. It's a perfect example of a catastrophic failure, not because they lacked information, but because they misinterpreted it. And you see this exact pattern play out over and over again, from the battlefield to the boardroom.
This quote, wow, it just perfectly captures the kind of thinking that leads to disaster, doesn't it? Sheer, absolute overconfidence. This wasn't just a miscalculation. Nope. This was a core belief, an assumption so powerful it was basically a blindfold, completely shutting out any other possibility. And that kind of certainty, that's the gateway to failure. And it's the first psychological trap we really need to get our heads around.
So this is really the big question we're tackling here. And this isn't just about military history. It's about a fundamental glitch in how our brains are wired. The very same mental hiccups that led to Pearl Harbor are at play in our own lives, every single day, in the decisions we make. So how does it happen?
Okay, let's start by really dissecting these failures. In this first part, we're going to look at the anatomy of a disaster. We're not talking about bad luck or external stuff. We're going to look inward, at the vulnerabilities that exist inside our own minds.
So let's zoom in on our brain's blind spots. Because the problem, it often starts right here, with each of us. You see, our brains have some quirks. Psychologists call them cognitive biases. The best way to think of them is like predictable glitches in our mental software that cause us to make the same kinds of mistakes over and over. And here's the kicker. We all have them.
Let's start with a really big one. Confirmation bias. See, our brains hate being wrong. So instead of acting like a neutral judge, carefully weighing all the evidence, we act more like a lawyer, building a case for what we already believe to be true. We actively look for proof we're right, and we kind of subconsciously ignore anything that challenges our view of the world.
This is just a perfect and really tragic example of confirmation bias in the real world. A completely fraudulent study got published, but it spread like wildfire. Why? Because it confirmed a fear that some parents already had. Even a mountain of scientific evidence proving it wrong couldn't stop it, because for those who were already worried, that initial wrong information just felt right.
This is a really tough question to ask ourselves, isn't it? I mean, think about it. Politics, your health, even just your opinion of a coworker. Can you think of a time when you might have given a little too much weight to something that just happened to support your initial gut feeling? It's a humbling thought. Okay, so if confirmation bias is about sticking to our guns, our next glitch, anchoring, is about getting stuck on the very first piece of information we hear. It's another mental shortcut where that initial prompt acts like a heavy anchor, making it incredibly hard to adjust our thinking, even when new information comes along.
Our brain just grabs onto the first thing it hears, like an anchor hitting the seabed. I mean, think about any time you've negotiated a price. That first number thrown out, whether it's for a car or a salary, it sets the tone for the entire conversation. Every single offer after that is judged against that initial anchor, making it so hard to break free. Our judgment gets chained to a starting point, and we often don't even realize it's happening.
So just think about it for a second. The very first salary you were ever offered, or the first asking price you saw for a house, or maybe the first statistic you ever heard about a really complex issue. How much has that first number, that first impression, anchored your thinking ever since?
Now, these biases we have as individuals are tricky enough on their own, but something really dangerous happens when you put a bunch of smart people in a room together. These mental glitches, they don't cancel each other out. In fact, they often get amplified. And that brings us to the dangers of agreement, where the real threat can actually be in the room itself.
Welcome to the world of groupthink. This is what happens when the social pressure to just get along becomes way more powerful than the desire to be right. In a groupthink situation, rocking the boat is seen as being disloyal. Disagreeing is frowned upon, and suddenly harmony is the goal, not getting to the best possible answer.
This table, it just lays out a tragedy, twice over. When researchers looked at the Challenger and Columbia disasters, they found the exact same toxic elements of groupthink were at play in both. I mean, just look at the rows. In both cases, there's this illusion of invulnerability, this belief that NASA engineering was just too good to fail. You see self-censorship, where where engineers who knew there were problems were afraid to speak up. And you see pressure on dissenters, where the ones who did speak up were basically ignored or overruled. It's a chilling pattern, and it proves that even an organization as brilliant as NASA can fall into the same trap again and again.
So here's the bottom line. We are all vulnerable to this. Our brains have glitches, and our groups can make them way worse. It feels good to agree, to all be on the same page. But that feeling of comfort, it can come at a terrifying price. So the real question is there a way to fight back against this?
Oh, absolutely there is. It's a systematic approach actually developed by the military and intelligence communities for this exact reason, to fight these cognitive traps. It's called the red team mindset. And it's not about being negative or just shooting down ideas. It's about being constructively critical. So red teaming is basically the formal process of playing devil's advocate. It's about stress testing an idea or a plan from every angle you can think of. The goal isn't to kill the idea. The goal is to find its weak spots so you can make it stronger, more resilient, and ultimately a whole lot better.
And you know what the best part is? You don't need to be in a formal red team to start thinking this way. So in this next part, let's open up the Devil's Advocate Toolkit and look at a few simple, powerful things you can start using right away to challenge assumptions, whether that's in a work meeting or just questioning your own beliefs.
This framework is just brilliant in its simplicity. It maps a specific cognitive challenge to a specific red team solution. So, for example, when you're gathering info, the challenge is that you might be doing a limited search. The solution? Issue redefinition. When you're making a big decision, the challenge is overconfidence. The solution? Devil's advocacy. It's basically a practical roadmap for thinking better.
So let's look at that first tool, issue redefinition. Before you even try to solve a problem, you have to ask, are you sure you're solving the right problem? By taking a moment to rephrase it, to question its basic assumptions, and to just zoom out and look at the bigger picture, you force yourself to see the issue from totally new angles. It's a simple exercise that can stop you from wasting a ton of time and energy going down the wrong path.
Okay, here is a super simple rule that can completely transform any meeting. Everyone speaks once before anyone speaks twice, and senior people speak last. This one move shatters the cycle of groupthink. It stops the loudest or most senior person from anchoring the whole conversation, and it creates space for the quieter, more hesitant people on the team to share what could be critical information. It's just a powerful way to democratize a discussion.
So why does all of this matter to you and me? Because these tools, these concepts, they're not just for generals and spies. They're for anyone who wants to make better decisions in their life.
Think about it, confirmation bias is the engine that runs our social media echo chambers, right? Where algorithms just feed us more of what we already believe. Groupthink can take over a family discussion about money. Anchoring happens in every single negotiation we enter. These aren't just abstract ideas, they are the invisible architecture of our daily lives.
And really, this is the ultimate goal of the red team mindset. To learn how to apply it not just to other people's ideas, but to our own. To have the courage to question our own most deeply held beliefs. So why not just try a small experiment? The next time you're in a team meeting, suggest that everyone speaks once rule. Just see what happens. And that brings us to the final challenge. My question for you is this. What cherished belief would you be willing to put on trial? What idea are you willing to really challenge, not to destroy it, but to see if it's truly strong enough to survive?